We have all seen the savagery that ISIS is capable of. They have publicly and openly beheaded countless numbers of people. They have enforced their extremely radical form of Islamic fundamentalism on the hundreds of square miles of territory that they've been able to bring under their terrorist nation. ISIS is a terrible, terrible organization of a confused, twisted group of people. This horrific development going on in the world that is ISIS has left us wondering, why have they been so successful? How has a ragtag group of Arabs in the middle of the Iraqi and Syrian desert been able to take over hundreds of square miles of territory in such a short amount of time? And there's a variety of factors which I have explained many times in the past on this show which has led to this situation. And many of these factors have been directly due to the actions of the United States. And today, we are now finding out the exact catalyst behind ISIS's success and who caused it. Great guess, the United States of America. So let's delve in. The Guardian wrote the piece detailing this situation, so I'm going to read from that particular article. Quote, one of Saddam Hussein's former intelligence officers masterminded Islamic State's takeover of northern Syria after becoming embittered by the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq, according to a report by the German magazine Der Spiegel. Documents uncovered in Syria reveal meticulous planning for the group's structure and organization, the report says, with the 31 pages of handwritten charts, lists, and schedules amounting to the blueprint for the establishment of a caliphate in Syria. The documents were the work of a man identified by the magazine as Samir Abd Muhammad al-Khilfawi. That's right. Who is a former colonel in the intelligence service of Saddam Hussein's Air Defense Force, who went by the pseudonym Haji Bakr, Spiegel says. The file suggests that the takeover of northern Syria was part of a meticulous plan overseen by Haji Bakr during techniques including surveillance, espionage, murder, and kidnapping, honed in the security apparatus of Saddam Hussein. Bakr was, quote, bitter and unemployed after the U.S. authorities in Iraq disbanded the army by decree in 2003, the article says. And between 2006 and 2008, he was reportedly in U.S. detention facilities, including Abu Ghraib prison. And the article, it goes on to further describe how basically Bakr was essentially the mastermind behind ISIS's success. This guy was the leader behind the scenes. He laid out page by page how ISIS was going to become the Islamic caliphate that exists today. He was the guy who even handpicked the face of ISIS today, al-Baghdadi, to be the leader of ISIS to the public. And again, this is a guy who was a higher up in the Saddam Hussein regime prior to the Iraq invasion. He was part of Saddam's regime that held stability in that region for decades. Because don't forget, Iraq is essentially three countries. You have the Kurds in the north, the Sunni Arabs in the middle, and the Shia Arabs in the south, and they each detest each other. Before Saddam Hussein came into power, these people have been fighting for generations. But Saddam Hussein and his regime held peace in that region for decades. And this guy was a part of that regime. And once that regime was toppled and the U.S. decided to replace Saddam's regime with the Shias, this guy was thrown out of power and into prison. Anybody would be angry with the United States for that. You were well off. You had power in Saddam Hussein's regime. And out of the blue, the U.S. makes up this myth that you have chemical weapons. And then all that you have worked for is thrown in the trash. And in the midst of all this chaos, the United States caused this radical group of ragtag, confused young men drastically twist their religion to justify getting back at the U.S. for all the destruction they caused. And you are just as angry at the U.S. as them. The U.S. took away your power, your status, your life. They took it all away from you. You're going to get back at them as well, and it's the perfect combination. Your strategic genius developed under the tutelage of Saddam Hussein, along with their manpower and durability. ISIS right there, it's born. This would have never occurred if it were not for the efforts of the United States to cause chaos in Iraq by taking out Saddam Hussein's regime. This guy would have been happily sitting as a higher-up in Saddam Hussein's regime, keeping his power and his status, not masterminding a brutal terrorist organization. But thanks to the United States, now ISIS is running wild, beheading people, enforcing the radical form of Islam. The region is in absolute chaos. And here is how we prevent situations like these. Stop getting involved in conflicts in regions that you know absolutely nothing about. Of course, Saddam Hussein was a terrible, brutal dictator, but he kept stability in a region that was sitting on a bomb, and it wasn't until the United States intervened that that timer started to tick and eventually went off. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. All it takes is a brief look at Iraq's history and some common sense. Three ethnic groups that despise each other, and a dude holding it all together. Maybe we shouldn't mess with that. But again, reasonable adjustments are no longer a part of U.S. foreign policy. It's do whatever the military companies that put me in power want me to do. I'll justify it by making up some myth about him having chemical weapons that we knew he gave up over a decade ago. Listen, stop the senseless war, please, because look what it gets us. ISIS.